Hi everybody, today I wanted to do a video ranking the discography of one of my favorite artists of all time, Travis Miller, also known as Lil Ugly Mane, also known as Sean Kemp, also known as Dale Krugler, also known as Lord Master DJ SK, the Subtarian Suspect, also known as Bad Weather, also known as Woodmerk, also known as Boring Circumcision, also known as Young Gus, also known as... This guy has a lot of names and has released a huge amount of music under many different aliases, labels, and an impressive variety of genres over the course of a decade. I don't want to waste any more time on the introduction, but before I get into the ranking, I want to talk about some other releases that are not so important to his career or are not fundamental to understanding him as an artist. Criminal Hypnosis is a compilation of sort of throwaway tracks released before the album Mr. Thug Isolation. It has 3 songs that would be later included on that album, plus an instrumental for song Radiation, which is something that I always appreciate, having the instrumentals for other songs. Then there is a Harsh Noise introduction and 2 shorter instrumental tracks, plus 2 exclusive songs that are only available on this project. I kind of like it. I like this one. I like this project. It's good. I really like the Ocean introduction. The song Polo Ride and your whole shit are really good, but it doesn't really compare to most of his other releases. Then I have to mention 2 projects that were entirely produced by Lil Ugly Mane under the pseudonym Sean Kemp. The first one being a 7-track EP with Supersort Human, which is mostly an okay release. It has some nice songs, but it's not the most consistent project when it comes to quality and sound. I recommend the tracks UFO in, Go Away, Me and You, but I also really like the interlude. Then I have to talk about the collaboration album with legendary MC Nicholas F., also known as Nick Fury. This one is a fantastic record. It has great production all around, solid lyricism, great verses from both Nick Fury and Lil Ugly Mane, which appears twice on the album and has 2 of my favorite verses. It has some really solid tracks, but my only complaint lays with the song Lucid's Load, which is the 5th track on side A of the album, a chopped and screwed version of a previously released track called Days Like This, which I will talk about later. I cannot really stand the slowed down reverberated remix. I absolutely adore the original version, but I really despise the sound of this one. Just sounds terrible to my ears. It's just a drag to get through it. But still, I do recommend this project in full because it is really good, and I seriously recommend you go and check it out. I did not include this one in the official ranking of his discography because they are just production works. He only really does the production and randomly appears a couple of times on this project, so that's why they're not in the chart. Next up, I have to talk about External Files, which is an instrumental EP that was released under the Sean Kemp alias. It is 6 tracks and less than 20 minutes long, and it is the 3rd one released under this pseudonym. I love this one. I love this EP. I have some incredibly fond memories attached to this, and I really love it. It's really nostalgic for me. I did not include this one in the official ranking because I still have to check out the 2 other instrumental EPs released under the name Sean Kemp. But if I did, this one would have been very, very high, at least in the top 5. After that, I wanted to quickly mention 3 more EPs. Thug Isolation, an 18-minute long noise jazz track. Doing Badass Improvisational Stuff Rag for Piano, an 8-minute piano improvisation piece with 3 archival bonus tracks. And the final one, which is Thing as Thatare. I really don't know how to pronounce its title, but it will be on screen now, which is an archival EP with 3 tracks that were not released before. And these releases are okay. I really don't have to say a lot about them. I really like some tracks here and there, but it's not really a fundamental step of his career. It's interesting if you want to check out some unreleased material of his, but otherwise you can just skip this without any problem. Last one I have to mention before going into the ranking, I Believe the World Would Be a Better Place Without You, is a 15-minute long song that I'm yet to hear in full, and that is, at the time of writing, also the most recently released piece of music from Lil Ugly Mane. Full title, Play a Circle, column, Premeditation, quote, The First Prophecy, unquote, Preview Mixtape, quote, Real Murder Posse Underground Version, unquote. This is the first full-length release by Lil Ugly Mane, and it is very rough. The production quality is there, and this is a decent starting point, but ultimately this album feels very, very basic. The pitched down voice doesn't always work, and some of the instrumentals on this record are drier than a nun's pussy, but some tracks are still really enjoyable even despite that. As a project in full, it is not really that good, but I recommend the tracks Mask on My Fucking Face, Graveyard Hoe, and Kidnap a Sucker. My least favorite on the project is the short interlude called Psycho Shit, which is absolutely horrendous and it sounds like shit. And also, yes, the cover that you are seeing is censored, and I seriously do not recommend that you look the original cover of this album up. It's a 6 out of 10. The Weeping Worm is an EP released in 2014 that currently has 5 tracks, some of which are pretty good, some of which are pretty bad. My favorite track on this EP is Passion Scepter / Third Mystery, which is a 9-minute odyssey into complete madness and also one of my all-time favorite songs from his discography. The other really, really good song on this EP is Days Like This with Nick Fury, the one that I previously talked about in my Trick Dice segment at the beginning of the video. The 3 remaining tracks on this EP are Lights Down Low, which is just one of Lil Ugly Mane's worst songs. It just sounds like shit. It's horrible. I want to burn into the ground and never have to hear it again. Then we have Hideous Disfigurements, which is a song that I know a lot of people really love, but for me it never did much, or at least I do really like the lyrics and the themes that it presents, but I just really don't like how it sounds. The closing track on the EP is called Hello, and it is just a 2 seconds long noise burst that leaves no impression and means absolutely nothing, so I really do not see the point talking about it. So overall, this project is not that good if taken as a full project, but the songs individually are really, really good, especially Passion Scepter Third Mystery, as I've said, that is one of Lil Ugly Mane's best songs ever, no doubt. But it just feels like a compilation of sorts, much like Criminal Hypnosis that I talked about at the beginning of the video. So if you really just want to check this one out, keep in mind that it's nothing special and you can just skip it, but do listen to Passion Scepter Third Mystery because that song is insane. This is a 6 out of 10. Released in 2017 under the Bad Weather alias, this is easily Lil Ugly Mane's most introspective and personal project. Less than 30 minutes long, it deals with incredibly depressing subject matter, and it has a huge focus on this very lengthy instrumental ambient segments aiming to create an intense sense of dread, loneliness, and hopelessness. The hip-hop tracks on this record are very few and far between, and they're all incredibly dark and disturbing, very hard to listen to, whether it is the story of a child being kidnapped, a very distressing self-portrait, or an unnerving tale of alcohol addiction. The ambient, sample-infused instrumentals that make up the majority of the record can sometimes drag on for a bit too long and can make the album feel a whole lot longer than 28 minutes, but the record is still really good nonetheless. The reason why this album is so low on the list is because I find it very hard to revisit. Given the very intense and heavy subject matter, I don't listen to this project all that often compared to Travis' other albums. My favorite tracks are the hip-hop ones, Man Wearing a Helmet, Haze of Interference, and Stoop Lights, while my least favorite has to be Fondly Eulogizing Sleep, because the loop sounds so incredibly repetitive that it gets very, very boring after a while. It's a 7 out of 10. And now we have the other depressing Lil Ugly Mane rap album, which is Oblivion Access, chronologically speaking the first project where he doesn't pitch down his own voice. If the Bad Weather album was very introspective and reflected his broken state of mind, this one is just as sad, but in a much more existential and, dare I say, philosophical way to a degree. The songs on this project discuss topics such as addiction, despair, life after death, and artistry and critical reception of one's work, mixed in with a bunch of really good atmospheric instrumental cuts. And this album is also full of harsh noises from front to back, and there are a lot of harsh noise songs that just come out of nowhere, so be warned about that. To put it straight, this album is a masterpiece. From a writing and production standpoint, it is all around just an excellent body of work, and there are 3 tracks out of the 13 in the track list that just make my spine chill every time that I listen to them. Just to be clear, I am talking about the second verse on Collapse on the Pier, the sample on Leonard's Lake, and the outro on the final song. It's not at all an easy listen, but I highly recommend it. My favorite tracks are Collapse on the Pier, Intent and Purulent Discharge, and Leonard's Lake. that I already talked about. My least favorite is Warmest Flag, just because I never really got much into it. And also this project marks a huge jump when it comes to the rating compared to the previous entry, since this one, for me, is an 8.5 out of 10. This is the second volume out of a trilogy of compilations slash instrumental records slash Lil Ugly Mane's literal dumpsters for every song he made but never released. Three-Sided Tape Volume 2 is 57 minutes long and has 29 tracks on it. It is very difficult for me to talk about the second volume without having even mentioned the first one yet, but to put it simply, while I won't be making some super in-depth comparisons between this and the other volumes, I think that this one is the weaker of the three. And it is also the darkest of the three. There are some tracks in this project that just straight up sounds like they come from the deepest layer of hell. The tracklist on this project is incredibly disjointed, even more so than in the other two albums of the trilogy, and this comes with a series of pacing issues, mostly given by the short tracks, because yes, there are some tracks that are less than 30 seconds long in this project, and others that are 5 or more minutes in length, and when these two types of songs are placed back to back, like on the very first leg on the album, the pacing suffers quite a bit. Out of 29 tracks, I'm bound to find something that I don't like, and there are a couple of tracks here and there on this project that I feel like are unnecessary or that just sound very unappealing. And because the majority of this project is really good, those moments stand out even more, even if they are few and far between. I still really enjoy this project, and I think that it is a great album. I highly recommend it along with the rest of the trilogy that we are going to talk about shortly. My favorite tracks are Underwater Tank First Version. That song is incredible. Short Paragraph of My Life with Nick Fury, also known as Nicholas F., that will be later included in Trick Dice, the project that we talked about at the beginning of this video, and Clueless 2, with a honorable mention for the closing track, Misery. My least favorite track on the project is the Found Tape interlude, just because there was another Found Tape track previously in the project, so I found the interlude, again, very unnecessary. It's an 8.5 out of 10. Lil Ugly Mane's most recent release is also his most sonically distant body of work from anything he has put out during his decade-long career preceding it, as it is not a hip-hop album, it's not a noise, jazz, fusion, experimental EP, but it is a dream pop, alternative rock record with hypnagogic and psychedelic pop influences. This record is sad, but it is sad in a much more abstract and almost romantic kind of way. It is not existentialist like Oblivion Access, and it is not downright disturbing like the Bad Weather Project, but it conveys its sadness and its meaning through some odd and quite abstract lyricism that paints weird but incredibly powerful imagery. Travis sings through the majority of the record, and even if he is not the most interesting vocal presence to hear for a full hour of music, his voice holds up very well for the majority of the track list. And the instrumentals are also really good, creating some psychedelic effects and leaving a lasting impact on the listener. Even if most of them are just composed by a single segment that loops all throughout the track, there are also some amazing samples all over this record, and the instrumentation is just one of the finest out of his entire discography. The huge variety of sounds and genres here is just outstanding. There is even a shoegaze song on this project, and it is egregious. It's beautiful. I think that overall this record is very interesting, and it offers a look on a broken man's psyche. This record is a call for help from a man that's broken beyond repair, delivered through some dreamy instrumentals and abstract metaphoric lyricism. My favorites and least favorite tracks are on screen, and I am giving this an 8.5 out of 10. Okay, this one is kind of a cheat, I admit it. Undoing an Evil Deed Blues is an 8-minute long song composed of 3 parts, a sampled intro and outro, and a long central section that works as a full-on hip-hop track. This song is an exceptional, outstanding piece of music and of art. It is an introspective look into Lil Ugly Mane's mind at the time, as this one, released in 2013, was supposed to be a departure from music. This was supposed to be his swan song, a farewell to the music world, which would not happen, but alas, this song is incredible. The outro is beautifully gloomy, and the verses are incredible from a songwriting standpoint. I really don't have too much else to say on here because it's just a single song, but I highly recommend it. I'd give this a 9 out of 10. first volume in the trilogy of compilations slash instrumental records slash Lil Luck the Main's literal dumpster for every song he made but never released. This one has 32 tracks and lasts 61 minutes in length. It has an incredible wide variety of sounds and styles fusing together, ranging from cloud rap to jazz rap, straight up experimental hip hop, some Memphis Southern rap inspired tracks, some clubs house songs, some dream pop, and goddamn black metal. This album is wild. This album is wild, and despite its ratio of songs to runtime, it has an excellent flow. It doesn't feel half as long as it is, and the straight up rap tracks are incredible. There are just a couple of them, but they're all really, really good and really, really solid. They are few and far between, but those are absolute highlights on the record. As you would expect, the production is perfect. It never gets boring or repetitive, and it is always incredibly varied and very, very creative. The light tone on this project, compared to the second volume that I mentioned previously, makes it an incredibly enjoyable experience listening to it, and I strongly recommend it to everybody that's watching this video. Even if it may take a while for it to grow on you as an album, it's definitely a nice listen. There are a couple of tracks that I don't really like, just a couple here and there in the record, but I feel like they all fit inside of the project in one way or another, and they contribute to the experience. Yes, even the black metal song that sounds like it was recorded on a carrot instead of on a microphone, it sounds good. It fits perfectly inside of the project, and I really cannot stress it enough. This record is fantastic. My favorite tracks are Hello, Slack in My Mac first version, and Forever I Be Staying In. Well, my least favorite one is probably Old Person Controller. It just for the introduction that I don't like, and just overall that track sounds really ugly to me. I don't even know why. I just don't like how it sounds. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10 though. Mr. Thug Isolation is Lil Uglymane's most well-known project, and for good reason. It is a Memphis rap revival mixed with early 2010s cloud rap aesthetic and a subtle and pervasive irony depicted through the lyrics written from the standpoint of a stereotypical thug gangsta that is actually sad and lonely on the inside. I really don't know how to explain it better than this. I know it sounds absurd and completely insane, but trust me, this project is insanely good. The lyrics are clever, they're solid, they're very well thought out, and the verses are verbose, or complex, or long, detailed. The production is leagues above Play a Circle, and it is insanely cohesive all throughout the album. Many of the songs are straight up bangers, like the jazzy, heavenly sounding serious shit, which opens up the album. At least it opens up the real album, because there is a first introductive track that is just harsh noise, like we're used to now. Then we have like Radiation, Lung Pollution, which is just absurd, featuring Super Sort of Human, great verse from him, insane beat switch, the wavy Bitch I'm Lugubrious, Breeze 'em Out and Twistin', featuring Denzel Curry, are very cloudy and hazy in their atmospheres, and No Slack in My Mac is just iconic front to back. The album is exceptionally well paced. It runs for 65 minutes, but it never feels as long as it actually is. I feel like the only downsides are the noise introduction to the album, which I mentioned previously, which I enjoy personally, but I understand it may not be for everyone. The interlude called Alone and Suffering, which I don't really care for, and the instrumental outro to the album that, while it is pretty good on its own, it strips away the momentum of the second to last track on the project, Settle Throw Them Guns, and it is not as grand of a conclusion as this project deserves to have. In conclusion, this album is fantastic. It is amazing. I love every single minute of it. I highly recommend it to everybody. Once you're done with this video, just go and listen to it front to back. It's great. It is insanely good, and it is Lil Uglymane's third best project to date. My favorite tracks are Serious Shit, Radiation, and Bitch I'm Lugubrious, which oddly enough I did not talk about before. With a honorable mention for Twistin' with Denzel Curry. My least favorite track is the noise introduction, the 12th movement thing. Not because I don't like it, as I've said before, but because it drags on for a little bit too long, and it may turn off some listeners from enjoying the rest of the album. And still, this record is a 9 out of 10. It's excellent. Uneven Compromise is an 11-minute long song that was released in October of 2012 as an EP. And why the hell is it above a 65-minute album? I'll explain. This song is composed of 4 parts. A horrorcore inspired hardcore hip-hop track, a sample-based segment with an odd instrumental and chopped up vocals of people saying the same thing over and over, a third part with a 50 plus bar verse telling a story that I am not going to spoil because oh my god, and a closing instrumental that morphs into something horrendous. This song, this EP, is an experience that you must have for yourself without any spoilers, especially for the third part, which is such a brilliantly written verse that it will leave you speechless by the end with your jaw to the floor. You absolutely need to listen to this as soon as you're done with the video. Trust me, it is that good. And this gets a 10 out of 10 for me. I really don't need to elaborate any further. If you take a listen, you'll understand. The third and final installment of the three-sided tape series of projects. This album is 2.5 hours long and it has a total of 50 tracks in its streaming release. It is easily the most abrasive, chaotic, experimental, messed up, noisy, insane out of his major releases. It jumps from traditional hip hop to hard rock to folk to harsh noise in no time, and it is just a messy, jumbled collection of genres with no order or criteria. And what makes this project such a compelling and interesting listening experience is the intensity. It is one that I have rarely encountered previously because this album is not just unique, it is special. It is a dense listen that holds you hostage, brings your ears to the point of no return, and punches you and throws you around the room back and forth relentlessly. Or at least that's what happens during your first listen of the project. During your second listen, you actually might warm up to its sound a little bit more and it may become an easier listening experience. But it's still a very lengthy and complex one. During your third, fourth, fifth listen, it gets a lot better. It gets better with every listen. I have this one at number one, so it's guaranteed that it's a 10 out of 10 already. But oh my god, it gets better with every listen, and I don't know how. Some of the tracks may stick out immediately, like the straight up hip hop tracks like So Much and That Scepter, or the sound collage interlude Evil World is also another one that I really like and that really stands out during your first listen. The black metal track Filth and Satan, or even the Heavenly Bitrate. This album has thousands of highlights, and it is, for the majority of its 143 minutes of runtime, instrumental. And beyond the variety of genres, it also features tracks spanning from 1998 to 2014. So there are basically 837 styles collapsing onto each other during the course of this runtime. Basically, what I'm saying is this album is immaculate. You'll never find anything like it, and I highly recommend it, even if it's not an easy listen and it may not be for everyone. My favorite tracks on here are The Scepter, So Much, and the opening track, Twin Tip. It sounds just so nice, smooth, and peaceful, and it comes right before the absolute fucking nightmare that is track 2. My least favorite one is Lamb, because even if I do consider this basically as a perfect album, within 150 minutes of music I'm bound to find something that I don't really enjoy, and Lamb just drags on for way too long. Even if the song Equipped for a Job, which is one of the last few tracks on the album, is worse because it is way too repetitive, needlessly long, and incredibly ugly sounding. Like, it just sounds terrible. I'd still pick Lamb as my least overall favorite because that one sounds promising at first, but it gets boring and boring as it progresses, and it's basically killed by the runtime. Needless to say, this album is a 10 out of 10.